So good morning. Welcome to our August edition of Every Second Saturday, Trauma Informed Ministry Part 2. My name is Reba Collins, and I work with our West Ohio Conference of the United Methodist Church in our Justice Involved Ministry. Today, our two facilitators are Pastor Ruth Carter-Crist and Kathy Kaufman, both from Gilboa United Methodist Church, which is this little bitty church in Ohio, Northwest Plains District for us. And both these ladies have backgrounds that really speak to this area of ministry. And I'll let them introduce themselves as we get going, but we just want to say welcome and thanks for joining us on this Saturday. So, just to get us started, in the group chat, put, how are you entering today? Are you, what are you feeling? Just, maybe one or two words that describe I am blank. What are you thinking about? What are you hoping to get from today? And make sure and put where you're from, because we have people who join us from all over the state of Ohio, and we just welcome you as well. So I'm just going to do a brief recap before Ruth and Kathy introduce themselves and move us into our session for today. But if you didn't join us last month, we did sessions 1 and 2 from the manual that you received when you registered. And I'm just going to do a brief recap for those of you who were unable to attend that first session. Don't feel like you really missed anything, and you can always go back and review that. We post these as webinars on the All In Community resource page for the West Ohio Conference. So you can always go back, and it's also available as a standalone on our conference website. It's under resources, and it's something, it has to do with trauma and or healing with youth. So feel free to do that. But we just started with a basic understanding of what trauma is and traumatic stress. And trauma is always, I think, one of the big takeaways for me last month is that trauma is defined by the individuals. People can have experienced the same circumstance or the same event, but there's a whole lot to what that individual brings into that situation that determines whether it is becomes traumatic to them or not. And also what happens after an experience or an event that also helps determine if trauma has occurred for an individual. So, and it's always diagnosed by a mental health or medical professional. So today we're not equipping you to be that person, that mental health or medical professional, but just to be a healing presence, to recognize perhaps when trauma may be present within an individual's experience and life. And just to, respond as a person of Jesus, of a person of peace and of hope and healing. So understanding trauma was one of the big things that we really dug into last month. And then what it presents as. Okay. And so, or some of the traumatic stresses that can lead to trauma for an individual. So we looked at some of those briefly. And then types of trauma, right? So there are different types: acute, chronic, complex, developmental, which is what we're going to dig into more deeply today, generational, and systemic. And I think that one of the big takeaways is that trauma can happen one time in one way, multiple times in one way, or multiple times in multiple ways. So it never looks the same it never looks the same to two different people. So we just need to be aware of the types of trauma perhaps that are around us. And I think we've all experienced some types of that going through this pandemic and through years of being under oppression, and systems can actually be a source of trauma. So how does trauma present then? What are the adaptive effects of trauma? So, hypervigilance, intuition, creativity, memories, and isolation. Those are all things that can be signals for individuals that perhaps there's a traumatic experience or something that has happened in their past that is driving certain behaviors or thoughts and feelings. And then just a big takeaway of trauma affects a person's entire operating system. It's not an isolated thing. It affects a person emotionally, socially, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. So in order to address the trauma, we have to look at the holistic picture. And I know in our last session, we talked about the body knows, right? The body knows. And recently I was on a webinar and it talked about how trauma is stored in the body. And so sometimes we see perhaps even it's a young person who is dealing with a lot of like physical ailments that just are uncharacteristic for a person of that age. Sometimes trauma manifests in those ways. So those are things we need to be aware of. And then we talked about the recovery process, learned about that in our video, establish, reconstruct, and restore. And these are things I think that people of faith, that as we care for ourselves and others, that these are things that we can really help individuals kind of work through this recovery process just in our presence. And then bouncing back with post-traumatic growth. There's a lot of talk right now. Often trauma and resilience are linked in the social narrative of today. But post-traumatic growth is often not really brought out into the open. So there's some great resources there. And you'll receive these slides at the end of or probably on Monday, as I always do. I always do a follow-up on Monday. And so you can go and learn more about those on your own. And then how you develop resiliency. It's kind of three parts to it: belief systems, organization and resources, and communication. So all of those things, really, when you look at them, it's about connectivity. Right? Resilience isn't developed in a vacuum. And there has to be some sense of resilience doesn't happen if we're always, winning, quote unquote, so to speak. If there's no challenge, if there's no barriers to overcome, resilience doesn't develop unless those things are present as well. So those are things we need to keep in mind when we talk about resilience. And then and one of the big key things for us last time was, how can others' trauma affect you as that person of faith that is walking alongside somebody? And so, we just need to be aware of things like burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. We can't, it's heal thyself first, put on that oxygen mask before you help somebody else. So we need to also be very cognizant of when we're working with individuals who have experienced trauma or going through, post-traumatic growth that we don't take on that trauma as well. And that we just need to be self-aware and check ourselves from time to time. How are we in our own recovery sometimes, so to speak? So those are the things that we really talked about. We also gave these action steps, which are in the manual that you all received. And we combined session 1 and session 2 action steps into this one slide. And then we gave resources as well that are also in your manual to help you keep going and moving forward and helping people with their trauma. It's skill, it's growth for you as well. And so it's not just attending these things and then walking away and going, oh, I'm ready. We need to keep working just as we do on our own discipleship and those kind of things. That's how we need to approach our ministries as well. So what are we learning today? We're going to take a deeper understanding of developmental trauma, what it is, how it manifests, those kind of things. We're going to look at best practices for working with young persons affected by developmental trauma. And we know from research that if trauma is not processed, and dealt with at a young age, that it doesn't go away as you get older. It's held, again, the body knows it's held not only in the body, but it's held in the mind as well. So, the video series is geared towards working with young persons, but if we're working with people that are slightly older, or a whole lot, or veterans, or elderly folks that have never processed never processed their childhood trauma, that's carried over. And so it's really for anybody, as I guess is what I'm saying. Then we're going to talk about intervention strategies for ministry with people who've experienced developmental trauma, and then 4 coping strategies and grounding techniques to use when experiencing stress. And we're going to practice those because I don't know about you, but I experience stress quite often as well. And it could even be a good stress that, a good stress that can cause some things to manifest. And so, it's about being present within yourself and being present for others. So we ask you to always be open, authentic, engaged, comfortable with being uncomfortable. Again, that is always the edge of growth. Whenever we start to feel discomfort, that means that there's something ahead, or there's something that we are learning that we're not quite sure how to frame that, and that's okay. We just want to, recognize that, and that will help us push through to that growth. Be non-judgmental. We all come to this space with different perspectives and understandings and experiences, and then just to be understanding. And so that goes right along with being non-judgmental. And also, if at any point in time that we are into the material and something, you have a reaction that is uncharacteristic, or that, there is a something that is said that kind of that causes some alarm when you feel free to step away, right? Because we are not divorced from trauma of our own. And so we want you to realize that this is a safe space. And if you need to step away from it for your own health and safety and healing, no judgment on that. Okay. Do what you need to do. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Ruth and Kathy to introduce themselves and to kind of go over our communication guidelines and how we're going to proceed through the rest of our time together.
Thank you, Reba. That was a really good overview. I appreciated the refreshing part of that too. I'm Pastor Ruth Carter-Crist. I go by Pastor Ruth because Carter-Crist is too complicated. And I just want to say a word, and that is, Kathy and I have been working in prison ministries since I was the pastor appointed to the church that served Kathy. So she was the one that brought me in, and I'll let her introduce herself a little bit more. But it's a passion of mine. My oldest son was involved in the juvenile system when I realized I needed to quit rescuing him and start having him take responsibilities for his actions. And it was a real eye-opener. He was involved with several other of his friends with a breaking and entering into the school system, and he ended up being the only one of those kids that didn't remain involved with the legal system and being reincarcerated. And I know that was because of both faith and prayers and the active role that I ended up taking to change his life, working with the system. So it's a passion of mine, and will always be a passion of mine, and a place where I've experienced both success and failure because of all those other kids that didn't make it, and are still struggling. Mm-hmm. So Kathy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kathy Kaufman from Gilboa United Methodist Church. Like Pastor Ruth said, we've been working together for quite some time. I was incarcerated from 2010 to 2013, 1,095 days. And it was tough, but I would absolutely go through it again if I had to, just because of what I learned and the women I met. But the trauma in these women are what keep me coming back. I want to make sure that everyone understands, and that's hard. We talked about that earlier, about the understanding part, what the women and the men are going through. So that's what we want to do, is help with that and help those returning citizens get the best start that they can.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, and I saw that Reba just posted this, and I also wanted to say that we are keeping you in prayer, Charles, and it is difficult when we lose friends, even when we know that they are going into a better place, if that's the situation, but also just because we are experiencing trauma of some kind every single day, no matter who we are and how safe we think our environments are. If we connect with anybody at all, we're going to experience some trauma. So I think this is a real relevant topic for us to be exploring. Our guidelines on respectful communication are also in your booklets that you've been receiving and previewing, and they're on the screen. Our responsibility for what you say and feel without blaming others, and that's a hard thing in general conversations, so just keep that perspective. E, be an empathetic listener, putting yourself into the realm of what it would be like to hear what you're saying. Sensitive, be sensitive to differences in communication styles. Some people say things factually, and some people are a feeling a speaker, and so listening to give people the full effect of their speech. Ponder what you hear and feel before you speak. Think about it. Think first, and just don't react with words that sometimes are not what you really do want to say. E, examine your own assumptions and perceptions, being self-aware, thinking through, do I really think this, or am I just responding? C, keep confidentiality. And that's very important in this group, as in all groups. This is a confidential exchange of information. When we go into those breakout sessions, as Reba said, that is not recorded. So keep that in mind. You can feel free to be very open in that, but you also may want to monitor what you're saying when we're being recorded and save your more personal comments for that breakout session. T, trust ambiguity, because we are not here to debate who is right or who is wrong. So it's okay for us not to agree. So those are our guidelines for respectful communication. I'm thinking you may have already been involved in mutual invitation, but that is the format that we use here in our discussions. We'll be using it in our breakout conversations and any group conversations that we have. So I'm going to review these points, and then we're going to do a situation where we're going to give a couple of us just an opportunity to try it. So in order to ensure that everyone who wants to share has the opportunity to speak, we're going to proceed in the following way. The leader or a designated person will be asked to share first. He or they may just volunteer to share first. He or she then invites another person to share. Who you invite does not need to be the person next to you. It can be anybody. Well, and since we're all virtual, that's probably good, except for Kathy and I. 3, if you're not ready yet, say pass for now, and then invite another to share. And that takes some of that pressure and reduces some of that anxiety. If you aren't feeling comfortable and maybe later on you want to enter, you will have an opportunity to do that. 4, if you don't want to say anything, simply say pass and proceed to invite another to share. 5, after each person has spoken, that person is given the privilege to invite another to share. And we'll do this until everyone has been invited, and then we can go back and ask if there's anyone that passed that wanted to be speaking at that time. So I'm going to start by starting a question. So listen to the question. I'm going to ask Kathy, and I'm going to tell you that in advance so you can still be formulating your response, and then she'll invite one of you to respond, and then you'll invite one other person, and that will be our practice session. So Kathy, tell me why you came to this meeting at this time and what you hope to gain from it in just like 30 seconds or less.
I'm very hopeful to learn some new information to not only help myself with the trauma that I've experienced, but to be able to share and help someone else. And I pass to, let's see, Dorella.
It's really Mary.
Oh, it's Mary. Hi, Mary.
Wait, no, Dorella is D. Okay,
Yeah, D
okay.
and then Mary. So
okay, sorry.
who wants to go first? How about D?
So thank you very much, Kathy, for the invitation to share. So I am here looking to gain more knowledge and information to apply for myself and also to pass on to my team here in our prison and reentry ministry, as well as the individuals we serve in the population of inmates and those returning citizens. And so I thank you for your time, and I invite Emily to share.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am Emily, and I hope to learn more about how to, I guess, help my grandson with his trauma that he's experienced before prison and after prison.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you feel like you have an understanding of the mutual invitation process that we're going to be using? Yeah, just kind of nod. Thank you. Okay. All right. Then we're actually ready to start our session number 3, which is titled Understanding and Working with Developmental Trauma.
Before we begin, will you join me in prayer? Creator God, you knew us before we were knitted together in our mother's wombs. There have been good experiences and bad experiences that have shaped us from conception to who we are now. Thank you for those experiences, for the strength and support needed to survive the difficult days, and the strength and support needed to celebrate the good days. As we learn about developmental trauma, remind us of your care for each beloved child of God. Remind us that any person whom we encounter is your beloved and may be carrying invisible wounds from their life. Open our hearts, minds, and ministries to better serve all of God's beloved ones. Amen.
Okay, so I'm going to start the video, and if you cannot hear it, I'm sure you'll let me know.
Welcome to the West Ohio Conference Trauma-Informed Ministry Series. My name is Rebecca Hugg, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Ohio. In this episode, we will learn about developmental trauma and how to best support those affected by that type of trauma. Developmental trauma is typically complex, and that occurs during early development. This type of trauma affects the whole functioning of a person, so we may even see effects of developmental trauma in older adults. The unique thing about developmental trauma is how it affects the brain, and then how those brain effects make other aspects of daily living difficult. The brain develops from the bottom up, and the brain begins to develop before a baby is born. That means developmental trauma can occur pre-birth. Effects of addiction, abuse, malnutrition, and much more can influence the healthy or traumatic growth of the brain. The brainstem is the first to develop and controls the body's ability to regulate. Things as simple as my body can keep a typical temperature, and I'm aware if I'm hot or cold. The brainstem regulates our heart rate and our blood pressure as well. The next part of the brain to develop is the midbrain and limbic system. These parts regulate our movement, our sleeping and waking, if we are hungry or not, how we react emotionally to situations, and the ability to attach to another human being. The last part of the brain to develop is the prefrontal cortex, or the cortical part of the brain. This part of the brain is the logical, rational thinking and decision-making dashboard of the brain. If the brainstem is affected by developmental trauma, then the rest of the brain cannot develop appropriately. The knowledge, skills, and awareness of someone with developmental trauma may be severely limited. I think about the teenagers I've worked with who, in the middle of an Ohio winter with 6 inches of snow on the ground, didn't know they were cold standing outside without a jacket on, or that they were hungry, or that their heart was racing. Here are some of the specific ways developmental trauma affects someone. As we look at the top 3 boxes with what we just learned about brain development, we can see that developmental trauma typically keeps someone in their primitive brain, or the brainstem. Their awareness of what they are sensing is limited, and because they struggle to regulate their bodies, they are stuck in a survival loop. As we look at the bottom 3 boxes, we see that people affected by developmental trauma will often get stuck in fight, flight, or freeze because they struggle to identify what is really a threat to them and what is not. They also struggle to take in nurture or care offered by others. Many of the youth I've worked with struggle to accept care from peers or from others. Because of difficulties identifying what is a threat to them and what is not, they struggle to relate well with others, to believe that others actually care about them or want to help. Here are some helpful hints on how to work with people affected by developmental trauma. They are written as if spoken by the individual. What fires together, wires together. Often, folks affected by developmental trauma will have experienced negative core beliefs or negative phrases they've heard time and time again from other people growing up. Every time they hear that phrase or something reminds them of that phrase, it's going to light up what we call the neural network, back to that earliest traumatic memory. And when that's hit time and time again, it fires over and over. What fires together, wires together. Folks experiencing developmental trauma will have a stronger attachment to negative core beliefs and negative statements they've heard time and time again. The second is, work with me on my developmental or brain age, not my birth age. Folks affected by developmental trauma sometimes show deficits in the way that they communicate, the way that they process, or their ability just to be aware of what's going on. Sometimes that means you have to help a person understand what's going on around them and to engage them at something that might seem like a younger age than they really are. So meeting people at their developmental or their brain age is helpful rather than expecting them to function at their birth age. The third is to identify and support a safe and caring trusted adult, typically for a child, but it could be for anyone you're working with who has experienced developmental trauma. It's important that they have at least one safe person they know they can turn to. The fourth is to provide me consistent and predictable patterns of interventions. We'll talk about interventions in just a minute, but being able to provide the same type of interventions over and over again, being consistent and being predictable, helps someone experience safety, and that's again that first step in recovery from trauma. The next is to use the same interventions in all aspects of my life. So when you use those interventions, they should be consistent in the home, at church, at school, at the workplace, in every way that they are engaging in the community. Be curious rather than judgmental about my skill deficits. Like we talked about, folks who've experienced developmental trauma will have some skill deficits and need to be taught maybe different ways that society wants them to engage. So be curious. Ask how they learn to say certain things or act in certain ways, rather than being judgmental. And help me learn to bridge skill deficits through modeling. Show me how I'm supposed to talk and behave and act. I don't trust easily, is often what you're going to hear from someone who's experienced developmental trauma. So help them know through modeling and teaching how they can best and appropriately engage in community. Let's look at 3 specific interventions you can be using in your ministry. The first intervention we can look at is called Flip the Lid. Dr. Siegel came up with this as a way for our brains to get back online when they've been knocked offline. I love to teach this to our adolescents by actually using our hand, and so does Dr. Siegel. Right here is the brainstem, followed by the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. Now, when all of this is together and working well, our bodies can function, our brains can function, we're aware of what's going on, and we're able to go about our day-to-day business without anything throwing us off. But there are times when there's maybe a traumatic stressor or there's something that comes into our minds and it freaks us out and our body is thrown offline. And that's when our brain flips its lid. That means that we can't get past the brainstem functioning here. If we can't regulate at the brainstem, our limbic system and our prefrontal cortex can't get online either. So we have to figure out a way to calm our bodies down so our limbic system can be back online and our prefrontal cortex can be back online. Once we're able to do that, then our bodies can regulate and we can go back to functioning day to day. One of my favorite ways to explain this in a different way is using the upside down traffic light. And we like to say that this is regulate, relate, and reason. Now, when we think about a traffic light, typically the red light is at the top. This way, we're going to switch it. So the red light is on the bottom, yellow light, and green light. That means regulate is our first step. If someone is dysregulated, their body can't figure out what's going on, and their mind is going a million miles a minute, they're dysregulated, and we need to red light stop. We need to help them calm their bodies and get in touch with what's going on around them. For more information on how you can do that, check out the episode about coping strategies. So we move from this red light, regulate. Once we're regulated, we can move to relate. We can't even talk to people about what we're feeling or what we're experiencing until we can regulate our own bodies. Once we've hit that red light, regulate, and we move to the yellow light, relate, we can communicate to people what we're feeling and experiencing. And the last color light on the top is reason, green. That means my brain, that prefrontal cortex, is back online and I can talk through with you what are my options, how do I make a different decision, and what do I need in this moment. So red light on the bottom, stop, regulate. Yellow is relate, and green is reason. Regulate, relate, reason. The last intervention you can use is called side-by-side or parallel play. Often we struggle as human beings to sit right in front of someone without it being intimidating or scary, especially for a person who's experienced developmental trauma. So by sitting side by side and doing the same type of game or play together, that's the parallel play, folks are able to process what's going on with them and tell their story through play. I use this often with children and young adolescents. We'll use puppets or clay or Play-Doh for them to be able to tell me what's going on in their life. This is a way that feels safe for folks experiencing developmental trauma to talk through what's going on for them. Developmental trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence. We, as faith workers and as our congregations, are called to come in alongside folks who've experienced developmental trauma to help them identify how to heal. What an opportunity. I hope that you can take this information back to your congregation and change lives through healing.
Okay, so I'm going to hopefully get us out of this. Give me a second here. It takes me a minute to figure out how to move on. Oh, there we are. Okay, so Kathy, I think you're doing this.
Nope, I am. We switch things around a little bit just to keep Reba on her toes. But the next thing that we're going to do is a centering exercise so we can both get some relief from all that cognitive information that we just received, but also to kind of put ourselves into a space that's healthy for us. So let's take a time to examine what's happening in our brains, our bodies, and with our emotions. You're invited to conduct a body scan from your toes to your nose. While practicing deep breathing, we're going to have you start at your toes and move slowly up towards your nose, noticing what's going on in your body and noticing without judging yourself. These are some things to be thinking about during that time, and I'll tell you when we're starting, so this is more just an instruction time. Notice any body sensations, any pain, weight, or tightness that you have. Notice any thoughts that come up, like I feel cold, or maybe my shoes are too tight, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling confused. Notice any judgments or emotional blocking or attempts to get through the exercise quickly. These may signify discomfort with pausing to be aware of your own body, how it feels and how it's functioning. I'm going to be setting a timer for 5 minutes, so you really have plenty of time to do this event. And as we do that, I want you just to like put your feet flat on the floor, sit up, free of the back of the chair so that you can really feel your body, and you're going to move from your toes up to your nose. Ready and begin. And come back to the present. Wow. So I want some feedback from y'all. How did that feel? Anybody wanting to volunteer a response? Take your mute off and go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go. My name is Pavan. I felt so relaxed. I was hoping it would last a couple more minutes. But no, I went to bed last night and I had worked on a project, and so I went to bed a little stressed, and I woke up today with a to-do list in my mind, which is horrible to do, especially on a Saturday. You're supposed to be in the weekend and getting relaxed, but yeah, I could feel my heart rate go down, and just, just a relaxing sensation. So it really was a calming effect for me.
Very nice. Very nice. Anybody else have some thoughts on how you felt with that? Well, I'll go ahead and share. I felt a little anxious because we are so time conscious in getting this presentation through. And it felt like it was a long time to be dedicating to that centering activity. And so I had that conflict within me. I kept on thinking, my brain kept on taking over what I wanted my body to be doing. So I think it's kind of like leading worship. You want to be worshipful at that moment, but then your mind keeps on thinking, okay, what has to happen next? So it's kind of a frustration of being that designated leader. So, okay. All right. Well, that was, I think that was helpful for us to get through and to think about what was happening next to our bodies. We're getting now ready to go into our first breakout session, which is listed as a group discussion in your minutes. So we want to look at these questions, and I'm going to read through the questions. We're going to give our group about 20 minutes to be in discussion. There's 4 questions, so I'm not sure how many people are going to be in each of the sessions, but divide that 20 out, and so we can help you with that and how much time for each person before they invite the next person to answer. So these are the questions you're going to be looking at. What thoughts, feelings, emotions, or physical responses came up for you while watching the video? Okay, watching the video. What stood out to you from the video? Consider what surprised you, what was new information, or what confirmed your understanding around developmental trauma. How does this information shift how you view the ministry of your local church, the people in your community, the role of the church in our world? And then last, what will you take with you to use in your ministry? Reflect on how knowing more about trauma can position you to serve people differently, ask different questions, or give more grace, or to adopt certain ministries or spaces to feel safer for more people. So some good thought-provoking questions are a part of that. Reba, do you want to go ahead and give us some instructions on the breakout groups?
Yes, I do. So I have posted these questions in the chat, and of course you have them in your book as well. I think maybe we combined one, or I don't know. I think maybe there was a little tweak in one of those questions. I can't remember. But so we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. It looks like 4 people per room. So what is it? 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 times 4 is 32 minutes. So 3, let's go 3. I'm trying to think of how many minutes you have to respond to each question. So 1.5 minutes or so. I'm not a math person, let me just say. So I'm going to open the breakout. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm going to open the breakout room. and just accept the invitation to the room that you will be in. So Mary, Dee, Emily, and Pavan are in room 1, and Barb, Charles, Kathy, and Ruth are in room 2. All right, so here we go.
Pray with me. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, every color, every race, all are covered by God's grace. Jesus loves the little children of the world. God, help us to see pain and hurt in the lives of your beloved at any age. God, we invoke your spirit to lead us and guide us on our journey to creating safe space for your beloved children affected by trauma. Amen. We'd like to have a bio break now. We think it's probably about time. So you're probably watching the clock a little closer than I am, Reba. About how long do you think?
Let's do just 2 minutes. And also, I'm going to launch a poll. So as you all, as you take your bio break, just 2 minutes, and then come back and do the poll, that would be great. And then we'll get on to session 4.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There. Sorry, we were muted.
Okay, this next session's video will provide information on and opportunities to practice 4 coping strategies and grounding techniques to use when experiencing stress. Key concepts from the video are written below in your guide that you had gotten. Take time to pause and rewind. So anyway, we're ready for the video.
Okay, so I'm going to close our poll. Thank you. 5 of 7 of you have done that, which I think Kathy and Ruth are together. So I'm going to close that for now, and we'll do another one at the end, and I will start our video. Please let me know if you cannot hear it.
Oh, no volume.
No volume.
Okay, hold on. Let me back this little thing up and hold. There we go. Share sound. All right, let's try it again.
Welcome to the West Ohio Conference Trauma Informed Ministry Series. My name is Rebecca Hugg, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Ohio. In this episode, we will practice 4 coping strategies you can use as a faith worker, and you can teach to other faith workers and those with whom you're working. The 4 are mindful breathing, focus on the 5, hyperfocus, and bilateral stimulation. The first coping strategy you can use is mindful breathing. The goal of mindfulness is to bring your attention to the present moment without judgment of what you are thinking or feeling. Just focusing on the sensations of your body as you breathe in and breathe out. Breathing is a full body experience. By engaging your full body in breathing, you can calm your body and your mind. Breathing, in fact, is one of the easiest ways to remember God's presence with us and desires for our life. The sound we make when we breathe in is ruach. It's a Hebrew word meaning breath or spirit. As we have been created in the image of God, we've been given a moment-by-moment reminder that the Spirit is with us and within us. To do this type of full, deep spiritual breathing, place one hand on your stomach. When you inhale, your hand should move out, and when you exhale, this hand should move in. Let's practice. Breathing in for 4 counts. Hold that breath for 2 counts. And exhale for 4. Let's try that again. Ready? Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. What did you notice? What changed in your body? Often what we'll experience is our shoulders relaxing down, our jaw relaxing as well, and our ability to breathe deeply through our whole body. The next coping strategy involves all of our senses and is called Focus on the Five. Focus on the Five engages all 5 senses as a way to ground someone in the present moment. Grounding activities like Focus on the Five can help our bodies realize we are safe in this space right now. First, we'll name 5 things you see, then name 4 things you can hear, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Try to be as detailed as possible when naming each item. For example, I see the rough brown tree bark outside and the tiny green leaf dangling from its branch, waving in the wind. I hear the sound of the air conditioner kicking on, making a rum, drum, drum, shh sound. I feel the stretch of my canvas shoes around my toes and heel as I roll my ankles back and forth. When I bring my wrist to my nose, I smell the lavender lotion I put on earlier today, sitting at my office desk. I still taste the dark roast coffee on my tongue from this morning's breakfast. Let's see what happens for you when your mind and body focus on the 5. So the first thing we'll do is name 5 things you see. Now name 4 things you can hear. Name 3 things you feel. 2 things you smell. And 1 thing you taste. What did you notice? Often, just like our breathing, our shoulders will go down and our bodies will become calm. The third coping strategy we'll look at comes from Dr. Rick Hansen, who has found that hyperfocus on a positive thing for just 12 seconds can develop a new positive pathway in our brain. Even in the midst of stress, if you can focus on a positive thing for 12 seconds, your perspective and energy can change for the better. Let's try it out. Bring something positive to mind. Maybe it's an image of a flower, the face of a loved one, or a sunset. Maybe your positive thing is a sound, like the laughter of a child, or the waves crashing on the beach. Do you have the positive image or sound in your mind? Now really bring out the details of what you are experiencing. Engage all 5 senses. Strengthen the image or the sound. Now keep your focus on that positive thing for 12 seconds. Take a deep breath in. Great job. What did you notice? What changed in your body? What changed in your brain? Let's recap. So far, we've practiced mindful breathing, focus on the 5, and hyperfocus. All of those tend to relax our shoulders and our jaws down and helps us know that we're safe in our bodies in this moment right now. The last coping strategy we'll practice today is bilateral stimulation. Bilateral stimulation is a way to engage both sides of your brain to help calm your mind and body. Typically, you do this through rhythm, going back and forth in a pattern. Examples of activities that engage your brain in bilateral stimulation include walking or running, tapping or drumming. The back and forth motion used in walking, moving our feet right, then left, and the back and forth motion of drumming or tapping engages our brains in a way that helps us cope with what's going on around us. Tapping, of course, is less obvious than getting up and walking or running around, and therefore is easier to use day-to-day situations. The faster you tap, the more you're trying to run through a situation or experience. The slower you tap, the more you're trying to savor something good and healthy. You can use bilateral stimulation to run through the tough stuff life throws at you, or to savor the good and healthy in life. These 4 coping strategies can be helpful for you as a faith worker, as well as things you can practice and teach with other faith workers and with those with whom you're working. I hope this has been a helpful opportunity for you to learn how to partner with folks who are recovering from trauma and how you and your team can be best prepared to serve God and to serve others. Amen.
I don't know if you all lost video or if we are the only ones that did. Can you see me? Oh, we're kind of back, but it's shaky. Are you guys having video problems or not?
I didn't, but I'm running it, so.
I was able to see the video.
Okay.
Well, we can't see any of you right now.
Can you see
Right.
us?
Can you see us?
No.
Okay, hold on a minute.
We've disappeared, so we're gonna go to breakout session next anyway. So, can you hear us okay?
There we go. All right. Can you see anything, Kathy?
We cannot. We're gonna switch computers here. But
Okay.
Go ahead and go into the breakout sessions, okay?
Oh, you want to do the breakout session and then we'll go back?
Yes, for right now, because of our difficulty.
All right. So, so we're gonna practice those whenever Kathy and Ruth get set back up. We're gonna practice those things, those 4 coping strategies a little bit more, because I don't know about you, but on the the take 5, she ran through those really fast. I was like, oh, okay, next one. So we're gonna slow those down a little bit. But for now, and this is kind of one of the questions that I think we were kind of walking around in our breakout sessions prior, or in our breakout session prior, but where do you plan to use this training in your ministry setting? And I think we talked about just kind of opening it up and not actually doing the breakout sessions and for time purposes. But think about, where do you plan to use this training in your ministry setting? And let's just do some popcorning around the group and just kind of share with each other. And I'm going to take us off of the PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop sharing so that we can just see each other. It's a very simple question. All right. So we can unmute and talk about it.
So I'd like to share. Earlier this year, I became mental health coach, right? Life coach. And so I'm excited because I just got my credentialing in the mail, right? So I'm now a board certified mental health coach. And I'd like to use this trauma-informed training inside the mental health life coaching that I'm gonna be providing for returning.
It's so worried, John.
So I can't hear you, Reba, you're muted.
So, okay. And so you're going to use it inside the mental health coaching part of that. Yeah. With your team?
So with my team, I don't know how I'm going to use it with my team. But I think we can share it with the team to see how we would be able to use it. There isn't a space, in my ministry, we have 4 pillars. And I don't see, unless Mary, you can correct me, in the 4 pillars that we have, there isn't really a space to use trauma-informed care stuff. But on the reentry side, there is, because we receive people that have come from prison who have adverse effects of trauma. So we'll be able to use it there in the life coaching component as we receive people. So, but in the ministry, we can just inform people and maybe they can use this as a training. Maybe I'll do that.
What I was thinking about, the mindful breathing when we do character development. And the ladies are, you know, after reading and then explaining, you know, what they read, what it means to them, for me to really for me to really understand, to be able to relate, do the breathing method so that, you know, I'm more relaxed, I'm more open to what they're saying. And then I can come back with a response where they can possibly understand that I can relate to what they're saying. So that would be, for me, that would be very beneficial, the mindful breathing in our character development.
Thank you for that, Mary. I agree with you. And also it's a coping skill that at the end of our sessions, we could share with them to be able to practice in the setting that they're in, since they're in prison. Okay, I like that. So thank you.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
awesome.
Why we have a team, Reba. That's why we have a team.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Anyone else?
I think we're back with both video and audio. Can you see us?
We can. You're kind of in and out on the beach a little bit, but that's okay. We get that. We get that. So
did you break into breakouts, or did you just decide to do one?
We're just doing popcorning, around. So Mary and Dorella have gone, but would like to hear from Charles and Emily and Pavan and Barb.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about using, we're going to actually have a grief trauma group like in the next week or so. And it's kind of related to COVID stuff. So I thought about using some of this in that as a debriefing part, particularly the mindfulness kind of thing. So I can see how we can use it greater, but I think I can almost put this to use for something we're going to do soon.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
I think it's a good way to get started with it, in fact. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
So I'm going to share, I would like to share it with community here in our neighborhood. We have a gathering every Saturday that we just by the trees outside. And it's just a sharing of how our week's gone, you know, and I can just share a little bit at that time. And then also I would share it certainly with my family. I would share this with my family.
Yeah, that's great. So Pavan or Barb, anything?
Yeah, I'll go. Right now we don't have any group at Gethsemane who's actually dealing with people that have gone through trauma. However, like I've heard some others say, I would share it with just the Hope Angels group that we have. They can maybe use it on themselves or maybe pass along to somebody that they know. If we do get to the point where we're actually serving someone that we've written to that has, been released from incarceration, and we can start to work with that person or those people one-on-one, this would be a really good strategy, because I think I now myself have a better understanding of what someone that's gone through some trauma like that, being incarcerated, and then just coming from some kind of a background where that environment was present, and understanding what they've gone through and what they may, some of these concepts that were shared, being able to relate to them because I have the understanding of what they've gone through would be beneficial. So it's all been great. This training's been great.
Right. Okay. Barb, are you there? She may not be. All right. So Ruth and Kathy, turning it back over to you, ladies.
Okay. All right. I think we'd like to go back to the strategies that we were given by Rebecca on how to get in touch with ourselves. And so just to review those, she talked about the mindful breathing. And I think we're just going to try that as a group. And remember, there was an inhaling usually through the nose for a count of 4, holding it for 2 counts, and then an exhaling through your mouth for a count of 4. And I'm just going to lead us through that. I'll do the counting and you do the breathing, okay?
Okay.
All right, so focus yourself on yourself and ready in through your nose. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, and breathe out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, and breathe out. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, and breathe out through your mouth. 2, 3, 4. I'd like to do that a lot longer, but but I think we gave enough of an opportunity for you to experience it that you can duplicate that on your own. I'd say do it while you're driving, unless you're in really bad traffic or you're needing to close your eyes. But other than that, that would be a good opportunity, and maybe at a stoplight. You know, because I know that's one of those stressful times for me. You know, if you're in a lot of traffic, or if you're around a lot of people, that would be a good time to do that. Now, I've talked to people about grounding themselves when they're going through a particularly anxious time, when they're like hyperventilating or having an anxiety attack, or just feeling a little out of sorts, not knowing what they're going to do next, and their mind's kind of going all over the place. That 5 senses, I think, is an excellent way of grounding, and I'll review it for you. It's looking at first seeing 5 things. And so think about, and if it helps you to jot down those 5 things that you see in your environment, that is actually looking around and being grounded visually to the environment where you are, seeing 5 things, hearing 4 sounds that are in your environment right where you are. Okay, and it can be mechanical things like the air condition, or it could be, if you're outside, birds or bugs or a beast going by, the wind. Number 3 is your feelings. So that's bringing it from external stimulation to internally, what is it that I'm feeling right now? And identifying them by a name, by a title, and seeing if that is even changing as you've got to the 3rd step of these 5 senses. And then, what is it that I smell? Again, that's external and internal. What am I bringing into my body in the area of smell, from the house, from outside? And then last is, what do I taste? And it may be a taste that's still in your mouth from earlier, or a taste that you're anticipating being in your mouth in the future. So what would your taste be? So let's try that one. Okay, you ready? All right. What are 5 things that you see right now? Again, you can jot them down or just think them in your mind. If you want to unmute yourself and popcorn those, that's fine too. Refrigerator, microwave, chairs, Kathy.
Chickens. Heart. Word faith.
Okay, what are 4 things that you hear? What are 3 things that you feel? And what are 2 things that you smell? I just smelled Kathy. And what is one thing that you think? Just to talk a little bit about that, did you feel yourself becoming more centered and more grounded as we went through those senses?
Uh-huh.
And can you see yourself using that if you're finding yourself maybe approaching some anxiety? You're anxious about something. Go ahead, Reba.
The feeling one was important because I was feeling, my arms touching, my hands touching my arms, and it reminded me of a restorative practice that folks can use in when people are feeling disconnected, or that you can soothe yourself and calm yourself just by rubbing your hands together, right, and getting that sense of touch. And particularly during COVID, we've been divorced of that, or haven't been able to touch other people. If you're a hugger, you know what that feels like. And so some of it is sometimes the anxiety, to calm our anxiety around that, is to just touch, rub our hands or our arms, and that's very soothing. It's a soothing response.
I want to interject something here. It's something I've observed with people dealing with the anxiety, is that some techniques that we use bring more negative attention to ourselves, and some things that we use are invisible, and so they don't draw negative or positive attention to ourselves. And in our society, those are very important factors. When we are thinking all eyes are on us anyway, and that's something that's increasing our anxiety, to draw negative attention towards ourselves is going to increase our anxiety. So just as Reba was saying, the feeling of your hands, or going, even rubbing your hands, or, as we're on virtual, I can sit here and rub my legs, and you don't know what I'm doing at all. And it's an invisible way of calming myself and centering myself. If I'm sitting in front of you and I'm going, or something that's going to draw a negative attention to myself, that is going to end up increasing my anxiety. So being aware of that and being able to non-judgmentally tell yourself that if you're dealing with anxiousness, or tell someone else that in a non-threatening way, you need to be very aware of how you're communicating. That can give people tools to use that are going to empower them to be in more environments that maybe they hadn't been able to be comfortable in before. So think about those things too. And I'm going to skip to that last one with the bilateral stimulation, because that has great application. So if I'm walking with somebody, if I see somebody's getting anxious and I say, why don't we go for a little walk? That usually is an excellent environment to then let things de-escalate. Why don't we just go for a walk? And I'm thinking of situations raising teenagers. Why don't we go for a walk? Or if it's a council member and you're at odds and you're going to hit each other soon, not really. Can we walk and talk about that? And it takes the focus away from being confrontational and allows us to both be human, and gives us that bilateral stimulation where we're able to regain some composure. And again, looking at I worked with people with autism before, and one autistic characteristic is a rocking back and forth like this, which gives them, that's that bilateral stimulation that's giving them that calming. And oftentimes to someone who is falls on the autism spectrum can't control whether or not they're doing that behavior, but you and I can. And so if we choose to do something that's like this is going to be a negative by society, perceived negatively by society. But if I can sit there and talk to you and go like this back and forth on my knees while I'm talking, nobody's going to know that I'm doing it, and I'm going to get much calmer, and I'm going to be able to handle things. So, being able to empower people who are dealing with anxiety by using some of these strategies, I think is excellent. I think that these are good tools for us to use for ourselves and for us to pass on to others who are dealing with anxiety. So sorry, that was a little lectury, but because I think the other things we can, you can practice and you can do on your own. So, okay. Where are we on our, I think we're ready for action steps, and I think we just want to read through these, Reba. Okay. We're kind of skipping around just because we were shaving off a little bit of time there.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes, so we can go through them, or they are in the book for folks.
Yeah, let's just read through these quickly. I'm not going to read the definitions, but just the headings. And Kathy is. We're going to let you just read through these, okay? Yeah.
All right. Pray. Of course, we all know prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Partner with local mental health agencies. Lead your congregation in a workshop. Serve an area or community where people have experienced trauma. Learn. We can never get enough learning, right? Learn more about trauma through reading personal narratives or taking a course or a workshop. And there's some different options there. Connect. Organize and participate in a healing worship service or support community for those who have experienced a traumatic event.
They said there's some tools for us to use so we can integrate what we've been learning into our lives. And I think that's an important part of reinforcing those with us. Mm-hmm. Since we only have a few minutes, I'd like to open that up for any questions or any things that you would like to make sure that you've got a handle on before we dismiss. Hey, Reba, I'm going to turn over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for participating. Just a couple quick things. There's actually the Building Bridges Community Experience on October 14th and 6th through 16th is going to have several sessions around trauma, particularly trauma and juvenile justice. And so, that's a great place to kind of continue your learning and your growth with that. And then, we have several other things coming up. Ministry Mondays, not so much around this issue, but the Saturday circles, we're going to be looking at racial injustice. And we know that folks who have experienced discrimination and certain types of injustices in our communities, that can cause trauma, and it can be developmental even. And so just that topic that we were talking about today. So the Saturday circles is one of those safe spaces, and it's a way for us to also practice our empathy muscle and connect with folks around the emotional events and experiences that we have. I think far too often we look more at behavior than we do at the emotions that drive our behavior. Right. And so, and I think the work of the church is to look past behavior and really look at the person and, what makes up that individual and their emotions and their feelings and all those things. So Saturday circles are a great way to really practice resiliency. And then we're going to start in September, and September, October, November, we're doing a 3-part series on Good Samaritan ministry, which is working or being with individuals who've experienced crime or have been victims of crime and survivors of crime. And we know that when a person has, lost a loved one to a drunk driver or to violence, or even has had their personal space violated or their identity violated through theft, that those can be traumatic experiences. And so we're going to actually pull some of this trauma informed ministry into how do we bring that into being with individuals who have experienced harm at the hands of another individual, right? And so how do we help to be those people who can help create environments of healing, or be, the love and the compassion of Christ to those individuals. And it's really, if you have like Stephen ministers, if you have care ministers in your congregation, please invite them to be part of this series. We're also going to introduce another kind of trauma, helping people process trauma, another tool called the Relational Care Ladder. And I think if you attended last month's session, I sent you a link to a paper written by a restorative practitioner. And it's very, very impactful. And it's a great tool that we can develop. Again, it's a developmental tool. It's something that we can put in our toolbox and develop our response better. So we're going to dig a little more deeply into that. And I'll resend that if you didn't attend last month, as well as they did a webinar with the author of the paper. And I know Pastor Ruth and I attended it, and it's very, very helpful. And we just didn't have time to incorporate that. So every second Saturday, Good Samaritan ministry that coming up. And there's our contact information as well for if you need to reach out to any of us for that. We're a minute over, but if anybody has anything else to share before we leave, we want to make sure this space remains open for that. And if not, I think either Ruth or Kathy will close us in prayer.
We're going to do it together, but we'll wait to make sure that there's nothing else. All right.
Mhm.
God, thank you for creating us with bodies, minds, spirits, hearts, hands, and feet. God, remind us to use all that you have gifted us when we feel overwhelmed and stressed. Guide us through your Holy Spirit to be people of joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and to have self-control, so we may use effective coping strategies to meet people where they are. Remind us that you are the breath within our lungs, the wind on our skin, and the hope for today and tomorrow. Amen.
Amen. All right. So I'm going to launch one last poll. It's 2 questions. If you would please just answer that. This is really important information that we try and get so that we can continue to provide and get better at what we're doing. So please do that before you leave. And thank you all for joining us. Can we give a nice hand clap of praise or wave? I don't know what the jazz hands, I think is what they're called, to Kathy and Ruth for facilitating today. Thank you all so much for being here, and have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you all hopefully next month. If not, some other time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll call you next week, Reba.
Absolutely. I'm pretty wide open, so give me a call.
Okay.
And Dee, I know that Kathy and I might want to talk to you too. So go ahead and jot down our phone numbers, and maybe we can get together or text each other, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what? If this chat is going to be open for just a couple more seconds, I'm going to put my phone number in the chat right now.
Perfect.
So you guys call me anytime, okay?
Will do.